On December 6, 2009, Susan Cox Powell vanished from her home in West Valley City, Utah, leaving behind a trail of suspicion. Her spouse, Josh Powell, seemed to be the most likely suspect given the family affairs that were about to be revealed, as well as the heartbreaking ending for all the parties involved. It is imperative to note that the Susan Powell case is more than a woman's disappearance. It is a tale of betrayal leading to devastation. As authorities began to unravel the truth, they discovered troubling behaviors exhibited by Josh Powell, who became a person of interest almost immediately. Despite mounting evidence against him, Josh managed to evade charges until his shocking actions in 2012 changed everything. Susan Marie Cox was born on October 16, 1981, in West Valley City, Utah. She was raised in a family that was relatively warm and had a good attitude towards work and aspirations. Susan pursued a career as a cosmetologist and later worked for Wells Fargo Investments after relocating with her family. She was raised in a family belonging to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and this naturally shaped her beliefs and sociable nature. Joshua Powell was born on January 20, 1976, in Puyallup, Washington, to Stephen and Tarika Powell. His childhood was marked by dysfunction. His parents divorced in the early 1990s due to Stephen's abusive behavior and disillusionment with the LDS Church. Reports indicated that Joshua exhibited troubling behaviors as a child, including animal cruelty and threats of violence. He attempted suicide at least once during his teenage years, indicating significant emotional distress. Joshua met Susan Cox in 1999 while attending an LDS Church Institute religion course in Tacoma, Washington. The couple began dating shortly after and married in April 2001 at Portland, Oregon Temple. Initially, their marriage appeared stable. However, financial struggle soon emerged as a significant issue for the couple. They lived with Joshua's father for a brief period after their wedding, which introduced complications due to Stephen Powell's inappropriate behavior towards Susan. As they settled into married life in West Valley City, Utah, the couple welcomed two sons, Charles in January 2005 and Braden in January 2007. Despite these joyful additions to their family, underlying tensions began to surface as Joshua's controlling behavior became more pronounced. The relationship between Susan and Stephen became increasingly problematic as Stephen develops an obsessive fixation on Susan. He engaged in disturbing behaviors, such as filming her without her consent and expressing inappropriate feelings towards her. This dynamic forced Joshua and Stephen to move out to distance themselves from Stephen's advances. However, the tension within the family persisted. Reports indicate that Stephen would follow Susan around the house and invade her privacy by spying on her while she used the bathroom or stealing personal items like underwear. This environment contributed to the strain on Susan and Joshua's marriage as they struggled with financial issues and Joshua's reluctance to attend church service with his family. In the years leading up to her disappearance, Susan documented her concerns about her marriage through journal entries and letters to friends. She expressed fears regarding Josh's controlling behavior and noted threats he made about their future if she should. In a letter dated June 28, 2008, she warned that if something happened to her, it might not be an accident, even if it appeared that way. This documentation would serve as critical evidence in understanding the dynamics of their relationship and the potential dangers Susan faced. On December 6, 2006, Susan Cox Powell attended church services with her two sons, Charlie and Braden, at their local ward of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The family was known to be active members of the church community, which played a significant role in their lives. After the service, they returned home to their residence in West Valley City, Utah. This day began like any other, with no indications of the events that would soon unfold. In the afternoon, around 5 p.m., a neighbor visited the Powell house and observed Susan lying down for a nap after reportedly feeling unwell. This visit marked the last known sighting of Susan by anyone outside her family. After the neighbor left, there was no further communication from Susan. The timeline indicates that she was last seen alive shortly after this visit, creating a gap that would later raise concerns among her family and friends when she failed to appear at work the following day. At approximately 2:29 p.m. on December 6th, Susan made her last phone call to a friend. This call did not raise any immediate alarms. However, it would later be noted as a significant point in the timeline of her disappearance. The content of this call remains unclear, but it was an ordinary conversation that did not indicate any distress or unusual circumstances. This final communication would become critical in piecing together Susan's last known activities before she vanished. Later that evening, Josh Powell claimed that he took Charlie and Braden sledding after leaving Susan at home, asleep. He stated they went on a camping trip to Simpson Springs Campground in a remote area of Utah's West Desert around midnight. This claim raised immediate suspicions due to the freezing temperatures that night and the impracticality of camping with young children under such conditions. Additionally, neighbors reported seeing Josh return around 8:30 p.m., which contradicted his timeline of events regarding the camping trip. When police arrived at the Powell home later that evening, they found Josh with Susan's cell phone in his vehicle and several items that would later be scrutinized during the investigation. On the morning of December 7, 2009, Susan's absence was noted when she failed to drop off her sons, Charlie and Braden, at daycare. The daycare provider became concerned after not being able to reach either parent. After several attempts to contact Josh and Susan without success, the daycare provider contacted Josh's mother, Tarika Powell, and his sister, Jennifer Graves. Alarmed by the situation, they went to the Powell home to investigate. Upon arriving, they found the house quiet and unresponsive. Given the circumstances and their inability to reach anyone inside, Tarika and Jennifer decided to call the police. Their actions initiated a critical response from law enforcement as concerns grew that the family might be in danger. The West Valley City Police responded promptly to the call about the missing family. Upon arriving at the Powell residence, officers forced entry into the home due to concerns that the family may have been victims of carbon monoxide poisoning. Once inside, they discovered signs of a struggle. 2 box fans were blowing on a wet spot on the carpet, which raised immediate suspicions about what had transpired in the home. In addition to this unusual scene, Susan's purse, wallet, and identification were found inside, indicating she had not left voluntarily. The police noted these findings as critical evidence in their investigation. The absence of Susan and any indication of where she might be heightened their concerns regarding her safety. Later that afternoon around 5 p.m., Josh Powell returned home with Charlie and Braden after claiming they had been sledding. Upon his return, he was greeted by police officers who were already investigating Susan's disappearance. During this encounter, officers discovered that Josh had Susan's cell phone in his vehicle, with the SIM card removed, the detail that raised further suspicion about his involvement in her disappearance. Additionally, police found several items in his vehicle that would later be scrutinized during the investigation. A generator, blankets, a gas canister, and tarps. These items were inconsistent with his claims of having taken the children sledding. During questioning at the West Valley City Police Department later that evening, Josh insisted he did not know where Susan was, and maintained that she was at home when he left her for the camping trip. However, inconsistencies in his statements began to emerge as investigators probed deeper into his account of events. Following Susan's disappearance, police conducted interviews with her eldest son, Charlie Powell. During the interview, Charlie stated that Susan had gone camping with them but did not return home. This statement raised immediate concern among investigators regarding the accuracy of Josh's claims about their activities. Josh's account was crucial as it provided insight into the family's dynamics and suggested that Susan was indeed with them during the night of her disappearance. Investigators recognized the need to assess the reliability of Charlie's statement further, given his young age and the potential influence of his father. As part of the investigation, law enforcement executed a search warrant at the Powell residence on December 9, 2009. During this search, they discovered blood evidence on the floor near a damp sofa where fans were blowing, indicating an attempt to dry the area. Subsequent DNA analysis confirmed that one blood sample matched Susan's DNA, while another sample was identified as coming from an unknown male contributor. Another key piece of evidence found during this search was Susan's letter in which she had expressed concerns over the marriage, how there was no attraction between the couple, rather just infighting. This was the same letter where Susan had stated that if something were to happen to her, it wouldn't be an accident. Her husband and his family would be responsible. These pieces of evidence significantly shifted the focus of the investigation toward Josh Powell, as it contradicted his narrative that Susan had simply vanished without a trace. In the days following Susan's disappearance, Josh Powell exhibited several behaviors that raised suspicions among investigators. He withdrew large sums of money from Susan's retirement accounts using a power of attorney form and canceled her scheduled chiropractic appointments. Additionally, friends reported that Josh had previously discussed methods of disposing of a body, specifically mentioning abandoned mine shafts in Utah's West Desert as potential locations. These actions and statements contributed to the growing belief among investigators that Josh may have been involved in Susan's disappearance, and raised questions about his intentions during this critical period. To make matters worse, Josh Powell took his sons, Charlie and Braden, and moved in with his father, Susan Powell, in Seattle. This arrangement raised concerns due to Susan's previous warnings about Stephen's inappropriate behavior and her desire to keep her children away from him. Despite these concerns, Josh chose to live with Stephen, which further complicated the investigation into Susan's disappearance. Police suspected that Josh Powell's brother, Michael, may have helped dispose of Susan's remains after cadaver dogs detected human decomposition in his trunk. Investigators gathered evidence but were unable to definitively link Michael to Susan's disappearance. In 2013, Michael Powell committed suicide, raising further questions about the family's involvement in the case. Following Susan's disappearance, Susan Powell, Josh's father, conducted a smear campaign against her, claiming she had run off with another man. This behavior drew scrutiny from investigators, who examined Stephen's past and uncovered his obsession with Susan. Evidence revealed that Stephen had engaged in inappropriate conduct toward her, and had made several disturbing remarks about her after she went missing. His actions contributed to the complex dynamics surrounding the investigation into Susan's disappearance. In 2011, Susan Powell, the father of Josh Powell, was arrested for voyeurism and possession of child pornography. The arrest stemmed from an investigation into Stephen's inappropriate behavior following the disappearance of his daughter-in-law, Susan. Law enforcement executed a search warrant at Stephen's home in Puyallup, Washington, where they discovered numerous images and videos of women taken without their consent. Among the material seized were explicit photographs of Susan, which raised significant concerns about his obsession with her. The evidence collected during the arrest revealed a disturbing pattern of behavior that included stalking and harassment. This information brought renewed media attention to Susan's case and intensified scrutiny of the Powell family dynamics. Investigators began to reassess Stephen's potential involvement in Susan's disappearance, considering his proximity to the family and his known fixation on her. As details of the charges emerged, concerns about the safety of Charlie and Braden intensified. Susan had previously expressed fears about her children being around Stephen due to his past behavior. Following his arrest, authorities faced pressure to ensure the boys were protected from any potential harm associated with their grandfather. As police scrambled to locate any signs of Susan, custody proceedings regarding Charlie and Braden Powell began too. Despite Susan's parents, Chuck and Jody Cox, pleading against granting custody to Josh, the state allowed him visitation rights. Concerns about Josh's behavior and the circumstances surrounding Susan's disappearance did not prevent the court from permitting these visits. Following Susan Powell's arrest on child pornography charges in 2011, the situation changed significantly. The state intervened and took custody of Charlie and Braden, removing them from Josh's care due to the serious allegations against their grandfather and ongoing investigations into their mother's disappearance. This decision was made in light of the potential risks to the children's safety given the family dynamics. Legal battles ensued over the custody of the children amid these developments. Susan's parents sought to gain permanent custody, arguing that Josh posed a threat to their grandchildren due to his association with Stephen and his questionable behavior following Susan's disappearance. The court proceedings highlighted the complexities of the case, as investigators continued to gather evidence related to Susan's fate while also addressing the immediate welfare of Charlie and Braden. Throughout this period, public interest in the case remained high, with media coverage focusing on both the custody disputes and the unresolved questions surrounding Susan's disappearance. The ongoing legal struggles underscored the challenges faced by law enforcement as they attempted to navigate the investigation while ensuring the safety of the children involved. On February 5, 2012, a supervised visit was scheduled for Josh Powell and his two sons, Charlie and Braden, with social worker Elizabeth Griffin Hall. The visit took place at Josh's home in Graham, Washington. During the visits, Josh locked Elizabeth out of the house shortly after she arrived. This action raised immediate concerns regarding the safety of the children. Once outside, Elizabeth attempted to gain entry, but was unable to do so. While she waited for law enforcement to arrive, Josh set his house on fire using a flammable liquid. The fire quickly engulfed the home, and emergency responders were called to the scene. Tragically, Charlie and Braden died from carbon monoxide poisoning as a result of the fire. Investigators later found evidence indicating that both children had sustained injuries, suggesting that they were attacked before the fire was set. A hatchet was recovered near Josh's body, indicating that he may have used it to inflict these injuries. Authorities confirmed that the explosion was deliberate and treated the case as a double murder-suicide. Local authorities reported that Josh's actions appeared premeditated, as he had withdrawn several $1,000s from his bank account shortly before the incident and had contacted friends via email to say goodbye. Additionally, he had donated his children's toys and books to local charities just a day prior. Following the incident, investigators uncovered that 2 5-gallon cans of gasoline had been found on the premises, and along with evidence the gasoline had been spread throughout the house. This discovery reinforced suspicions that Josh intended to destroy both himself and his children in a calculated act. When authorities notified Susan Powell, who was incarcerated at the time, he reportedly did not seem very upset by the news, but expressed anger towards those who had informed him. And 2 weeks later, Stephen invoked his Fifth Amendment right to not answer questions regarding Susan's disappearance, raising further suspicion about his knowledge of the events. The incident prompted a thorough review of the social services involved in overseeing visits between Joshua and his children, highlighting potential failures and safeguarding measures that could have prevented this tragedy. Following the tragic event involving Josh Powell and his 2 sons, investigators delved into the circumstances that led to his drastic actions. The aftermath revealed a complex interplay of legal pressures, psychological evaluations, and troubling family dynamics that contributed to a narrative suggesting that Josh may have felt cornered. Josh was under significant legal scrutiny due to the ongoing investigation into Susan's disappearance. He faced custody battles concerning Charlie and Braden, which added considerable stress to his situation. Authorities had ordered him to undergo psychological evaluations as part of the custody proceedings, reflecting concerns about his mental stability and parenting capabilities. These evaluations aimed to assess his fitness as a parent amid allegations of controlling behavior and potential involvement in Susan's disappearance. They became critical in understanding his state of mind leading up to the incident. The family dynamics within the Powell household were troubling. Josh's relationship with his father, Susan Powell, raised red flags due to Stephen's inappropriate behavior and obsession with Susan. Investigators noted that Stephen had conducted a smear campaign against Susan after her disappearance, claiming she had run off with another man. This hostile environment likely influenced Josh's action and mindset. In the months leading up to the incident, Josh engaged in suspicious behavior that further alarmed investigators. Him withdrawing large sums of money from Susan's accounts and canceling her future appointments were enough to raise questions about his intentions. As soon as he was given the power of attorney over Susan's assets, he stopped cooperating with the law enforcement authorities and ran off to Seattle to spend Christmas with his kids. To make matters worse, he made statements about disposing of a body and mentioning abandoned mine shafts as potential locations for hiding remains. This raised further suspicions regarding his involvement in Susan's disappearance. Following the incident, investigators focused on all of these aspects leading up to the fire. Evidence suggested that he may have felt cornered by legal pressures and the impending loss of custody of his children. Josh's suicide left many questions unanswered regarding Susan's fate and the extent of family involvement in her disappearance. Do you think Josh was responsible for Susan's disappearance alone, or were any of his family members involved? Despite Josh's death, law enforcement continued to investigate leads related to Susan's disappearance. They examined evidence from Powell's home and surrounding areas, but the absence of a body complicated the case. Nonetheless, suspicion remained surrounding Josh and potentially other family members as investigators sought to piece together the events leading up to Susan's disappearance. On February 11, 2013, Michael Powell took his own life by jumping from the roof of a parking garage in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This tragic event occurred approximately 1 year after the deaths of his brother Josh and Josh's 2 sons, Charlie and Braden. Prior to his suicide, Michael had been questioned multiple times by police in 2012 after his abandoned Ford was discovered at an Oregon wrecking yard. Authorities described him as evasive regarding the circumstances surrounding his vehicle. Following the deaths of Josh and the boys, Utah authorities speculated that both Joshua and Michael were accomplices in the murder of Susan Powell. Investigators noted suspicious behaviors from both brothers during their inquiries into Susan's disappearance, leading to ongoing speculation about their involvement. Michael's death added another layer of complexity to the investigation, leaving many questions unanswered regarding the family's role in Susan's fate. On July 1, 2013, the West Valley City Police officially closed their active investigation into Susan Powell's disappearance. This decision followed extensive inquiries and the tragic deaths of Josh Powell and his two sons, Charlie and Braden. Despite the closure, the case remained a focal point of public interest and speculation, as many questions about Susan's fate lingered. The police maintained that they believed Josh was involved in her disappearance, but without evidence or a body, the investigation could not proceed further. In February 2013, Manley, who conducted psychological evaluations of Josh Powell for Washington authorities, acknowledged his suspicions regarding Joshua's involvement in Susan's disappearance. Despite these concerns, Manley did not include suspicions in his official reports because they were beyond the scope of his duties and because Josh had not been charged with any wrongdoings at that time. In March 2015, Chuck Cox won a court battle against Tarika and Alina Powell over the control of Susan's estate. Tarika and Alina sought to have Susan declared legally dead to collect life insurance benefits. Ultimately, Chuck gained full control of the estate, ensuring that Susan's assets would be managed in a manner consistent with her family's wishes. The Cox family filed a lawsuit against Washington's Department of Social and Health Services and its social workers, alleging that they prioritized Joshua's potential rights over the safety of Charlie and Braden. In 2015, a federal court ruled in favor of the defendants, granting immunity to the social workers and finding DSHS not negligent. However, in 2019, an appeals court allowed claims of DSHS negligence to proceed to trial, leading to a jury ruling that DSHS was negligent and awarding $98 million to the estates of Charlie and Braden Powell. Following the tragic events surrounding Susan's estate, the Cox family actively pressured lawmakers in Washington and Utah to pass legislation restricting visitation rights to parents under investigation for murder. Their advocacy efforts aimed to enhance protections for children in similar situations, reflecting their commitment to preventing future tragedies stemming from inadequate oversight in custody cases. Do you think the court should stop parents from visiting their children if accused of murder? Despite the absence of Susan Powell's remains, it is widely believed that she was murdered by her husband Joshua. As of March 2018, there have been calls to declare her legally dead with homicide as the cause. In early 2022, a cave exploration crew searched a mine shaft in Utah for Susan's remains, discovering rib bones and scraps of clothing. However, DNA tests confirmed that none belonged to her, identifying them instead as animal remains. Additionally, pants recovered tested positive for male DNA, and efforts are ongoing to identify this individual. The investigation into Susan's disappearance remains open-ended, with no charges filed against Joshua due to his death in 2012. The case continues to prompt discussions about legal reforms aimed at protecting children in similar situations. So, what do you guys think? Is Susan alive? And if she was killed by her husband, what happened to her body? Where did they go?